Hear me?
Yes, hi Chika, we can hear you.
All right. Good evening, and thank you for joining today's session. My name is Chika Kasimpu. I'm a talent acquisition analyst with AP Africa, and I'll be your moderator for today. So today's session, we will largely be looking at operations and business enablement pillar as one of the pillars under the Bank of America's summer internship application process for this year. Over the course of the week, we have looked at a number of pillars. And today's session is the final session for, the series of sessions we have been having. Right. We'll just make progress right away. Okay. So for this session, we'll be talking about the Bank of America program. Of course, that's basically what the session is largely about, focusing on the operations and business enablement pillar. Then there'll also be a panel discussion, and there'll be a Q&A session as well. All right. So the Bank of America program and where East Africa comes in. East Africa will conduct a multi-stage selection process in order to select the candidates for this year's round. So, yeah. Sorry for the interruption. All right. So, like I said, for this year's process and where East Africa comes in, we'll conduct the selection process right from the application stage to the final candidate selection. And once you are through, from the various stages and you are eventually selected, you get to be part of a stage called the corporate immersion experience. The corporate immersion stage is largely a training that you'll be offered ahead of you meeting with the Bank of America team sometime in August, September this year when they come to Accra. Who is qualified to join the program or to apply for the program? You should be graduating in 2028. You should have interest in any of the pillars or divisions for this year's process. So in this case, operations and business enablement, you should have interest in that area, or if not this particular pillar, any of the other pillars that we have talked about in the past. You should have interest in at least any of those areas to be able to apply. And you should also have second class upper and beyond. Okay, so the various pillars. We have the global corporate and investment banking pillar, and under it we have the division being investment banking. We also have the global markets and research institutes pillar, and under it we have the global markets division. We have the technology and data analytics pillar, and under it we have the global technology division. We also have operations and business enablements pillar. Then under it, we have the global payment solution. We have the chief people organization, and we have operations, being what we are talking about today. All right. So, like I mentioned earlier, we have been having a number of sessions this week. We had the general info session on Monday. We also have, we also had the global corporate and investment banking session on Tuesday. We had the Global Markets and Research Institute session on Wednesday. The Technology and Data Analytics was on Thursday. And Operations and Business Enablement Part 1, if I should say that, focusing on global payment solutions and chief people organization yesterday. And today, for the same pillar, and focusing on operations. Right. So I will entreat you, please check our YouTube channel. You will see the various sessions that we had in the past. So you could listen to those sessions such that you can make an informed decision at the end of the day as to which area really meets your interest and you align with better. So for today's session, we'll be having a panel discussion. We have two of our distinguished alumni who have gone through this very process, and they are here to share their experience and the things they did which helped them, so that you could also I mean, probably utilizing in your own application process, and hopefully that helps you as well. So we have Chidera Osi and Grace Abikoye, who will be taking over for the panel session, yes, at this moment. So my colleague Elizabeth will be taking over to moderate the panel discussion session. Elizabeth, over to you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Chika, and good evening to all the people on the panel. Welcome to the panel discussion session for this program. And today, as per usual, we have two of our alumni joining us for this panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, help me give a warm round of applause to Chidera Osi and Grace Abikoye as they join me here. Sidera is an operations analyst at Bank of America, and she is from the SU Africa 2024 class. And then there is Grace Abikoye, who is an associate at Bank of America, and she is from the SU Africa 2021 class. A warm round of applause to them. Hi, Chidera. Hi, Grace. Can you hear me?
Hi, Elizabeth. I can hear you.
Hi,
Great.
Elizabeth. I can hear
Welcome.
you as well.
Welcome, both of you. And before we dive in, I usually like to give the floor to you guys to share a little bit about your journey so our audience can understand where you're from. So I'll start off with Chidera. Chidera, can you share a little bit about your journey so our audience know where you are coming from?
Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for the intro, Elizabeth, and thank you to SU Africa for bringing me on board. I might just add that this is the second time that Grace and I are speaking on the same panel, so it's nice to hear Grace's voice again. Um, So my name is Chidera Ossi. I am a recent graduate of insurance at the University of Lagos. So I did read insurance during my undergrad BSc degree. And prior to that, I did a national diploma in accounting from Yaba College of Technology. I mean, over these years, I've been privileged to do internships and work in some really great companies, from a travel agency to fintechs to Bank of America in 2024, to doing social media on the side as well. So it's been quite a journey amongst different things that I've been involved in, as well as organizations, societies like ISEC, Hot Price Unilag, what's it called, consulting clubs, the synagogue, different leadership programs and boot camps as well. Currently, I work as an AML onboarding analyst here at Bank of America, and I started about 7 months ago. So that's it about me.
Amazing to hear. Thank you for sharing that, Chidera. And I'll be passing it on to Grace to also share a little bit about her journey. Hi, Grace, over to you.
Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. So I would say that I started off very much quite similar to Chidera, especially with the experiences with extracurriculars. So I studied at University of Ilorin and I studied like cultural economics. I think it's important for me to mention that because a lot of people would, ask questions on is it really possible to move from a non-finance background to a finance background. So I studied like cultural economics, and I started at the bank in 2022 after an internship with the bank on the linear risk trading and FX sales desk, and an internship with the Commodities Exchange in Nigeria. And I started within the EMEA regional management team. My focus was on business strategy, executive coverage, governance, and risk control. And after spending 2 years within that team, I moved to the Sustainable Markets Initiative, which is a secondment with Bank of America. And the SMI, like as we call it, was established by His Majesty King Charles III. And the role of the SMI is to promote sustainability across multiple industries, working with Fortune 500 CEOs and C-suite executives. So that's me in a nutshell. I would say that the core skills and the core experience I've had has been along business strategy, risk management, and executive management, as well as project management.
Interesting. A good mix of experiences over there, Grace. And Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start the panel discussion now that you've heard from our panel. So I like to start off simple, nothing too deep. And my first question is, I'll start with Chidera for this one. Chidera, if you had to sell operations and business enablement to a room full of students in exactly one sentence, no jargon, no corporate speak, what would you say? Hi, Chidera, can you hear us?
Oh, yes, I can hear you, Elizabeth. I have been speaking on mute. So
Oh,
I would say operations is sort of like the gear that holds it all together. You know how you have a bicycle and then there's that gear that enables the bicycles to just the wheels to just turn and turn. That's what operations really is at a global bank like Bank of America. So it's like having that pillar that holds it together. We have the front office, there's the back office, there's the middle office, back office where operations really exists, right? And we just make sure that front and back everything goes well. So that's how I would sell operations to students.
Interesting and a very visual example. I like that. I'll pass it along to Grace. So, Grace, if you also had to sell operations and business enablement to a room full of students in exactly one sentence, no jargon, no corporate speak, what would you also say?
I would say operations is the backbone of the business, of the entire business. It involves a lot of skills and a number of people. I'm speaking based on my experience with the EMEA regional management team. So a lot of risk management, working with, senior executives, regulatory control as well. So I would say in a nutshell, one sentence, it is the backbone of the entire business that allows the client-facing teams to, make profits.
Basically, that. Thank you for sharing that, Grace. And moving on, this question will be going to you, Grace. It seems, yeah. It seems I have another one for you. What has your experience in OBE over the years been like, watching the division evolve from inside? And what is the biggest shift you've seen in how operations work at Bank of America and how it changed what your day actually looks like?
Okay, so many questions in one.
It's a packed one,
I
yeah.
Yeah, it's a fact one. So maybe we address that in bits. So first, what does it look like? It involves a lot of meetings, governance meetings that you have to run and be involved in. So in my experience, there were legal entities. The bank has like legal entities, and so there are various governance meetings linked to that. Governance meetings are basically meetings where approvals are given or an oversight on, certain products happens basically. And it also involves managing events, managing the executives in my case. So events like, World Economic Forum, Davos, preparing the senior executives for the meetings that is going to have, the bilateral meetings, who is going to be there, what the bios are. So it's more of like just ensuring that they are well prepared for, such meetings. And then I would say just on the governance and risk control aspect, it involves a lot of monitoring and tracking of programs. So because, banks are highly regulated institutions, there are a lot of I would say like oversight by the regulatory organizations. And so it's important to, track certain programs. We call them reg programs across the industry. We have meetings around that, which can also be linked to the governance meetings. And then just on the angle of the business strategy, it involves a lot of reporting on how the business is doing. In my case, I was supporting the president of International on a quarterly report that was presented to the CEO. Basically that was what it was. The way I like to categorize my experience, what is, there was the executive coverage angle, there's the governance and risk or risk control angle, and, there's also the business strategy angle. Now, how have I seen it evolved, I mean? I think maybe before I share that, I would like to share more about the skills required on a daily basis. So skills like great stakeholder management is very much important when you're working in a, operations or business enablement role. It's also important that you're able to pay attention to details. That is required because in my experience, involved a lot of, gathering information from multiple divisions and multiple regions. But then it's also important for you to read through all of those documents. So attention to details definitely important when you're dealing with the operations. Great Microsoft suites skill is also very much important. Just teamworking, communications, those are key skills that I would say are required for this division. And I've seen it involved. I would say this is linked to risk and basically regulatory risk. We see that, there's an especially since the 2008 crisis, right? There's been, would I say a lot of scrutiny or more of like, regulatory requests across the financial industry as a whole. And so it's always, I've seen that, there's been an expansion when it comes to like the risks teams, basically, or any team that is involved in risk management. So if you're interested in risk, maybe that's something you should also explore, or teams in operations that, are involved in risk. And then secondly, I see that there's a lot of deployment on AI, and this is seen across the industry, across even other industries as well. So organizations are thinking of how to deploy AI. So in Bank of America as well, it's quite the same. The introduction of co-pilots is well embraced and in full deployment. So I will say that that is how it has evolved over time. The risk aspect, risk management, as well as AI.
Very interesting insights there. And our audience, I hope you are taking note of this because you will be going into this new age and you also need to be able to adapt. Thank you for sharing that, Grace. And Chidera, I have a question for you as well. You're relatively early in your journey. What was the biggest gap between what you expected operations at Bank of America to be and what you actually walked into on day one?
Okay, that's interesting. So, the biggest gap for me, I would start off by saying it really starts with understanding that there are different teams within operations. I think last time I actively consciously checked, we had over 50 teams within operations, right? And prior to joining the division back in 2024 rather, for my summer internship, I originally thought that operations that I was joining was going to do only trade life cycle. So joining the bank, the only thing I thought was about equities operations, FICC operations, FX, mortgage, all of that, and then walking through the trade life cycle, having everybody from the, initiation to settlements, collateral management, etc. In fact, that was exactly what I pitched for my presentation during my interview, right? Because that's what I thought operations was about. And then my first day, I joined the client onboarding team in summer of 2024, right? I joined the client onboarding team. And what we did on the team at the time was essentially interfacing with the clients and then engaging with the AML operations team in the back end just to ensure that we are able to open accounts for clients. We can get them to work with the bank. We can get them to, do their product or essentially do business with the bank, right? And so that was what my experience was, which is in contrast with me thinking I would have to go from one table to another. We are clearing this, we are settling that, right? So that was quite a gap and quite different from what I expected, right? And so returning now as a full-time analyst, I've been in my role for about 7 months now, and I sit on the AML onboarding team. What we do here is essentially we get documentations from clients and we ensure that they meet the regulations. It's pretty much like what Grace talked about earlier about talking to, regulatory bodies, paying attention to policies, making sure that whatever documentation we're receiving for clients for a particular business engagement meets what is required by regulation, right? So that's what my team does here in the anti-money laundering onboarding team. So the biggest gap, therefore, is what you expect versus what you then meet, right? So if you only think of operations as, oh, we do the trade life cycle. So you start from one place and then you end with settlement or reconciliation, collateral management, then you have it all wrong because operation spans beyond that. There is risk. There is, yeah, Grace has talked about risk. There is risk, there's FS operations, there's credit, there is what's it called? Process designing within it, there is the tech part of operations, there is change management. There's so many parts to operations. So if you think about one part or you just pick a section of it, then you don't have the full view of it. So it's just tempering expectations with your reality. That's how I would put it. And that was my biggest gap. I had an expectation, but I met something else. And I'm quite happy with what it is right now. So that's what it is.
Amazing insights. Tempering your expectations with what is actually happening on the ground. Thank you for sharing that, Chidera. And moving on, my next question will be going to Grace. When students hear operations, many picture back office admin work, just as Chidera was describing. What's the most common misconception about your role, and what does the reality look like compared to that?
Thanks for that question. So I think the most common misconception is, definitely what you said, that it's just admin, right? So I think first, it's important to differentiate and, just say this, that, operations different from being an executive assistant, right? So it's quite different. So in my role, like I mentioned before, it involves a lot of stakeholder management. There is, there is a need to know so much. Because of where I sat, I had to know a lot about, the business in EMEA, the business in Latin America, and the business in Asia Pacific. And it was important for me to learn about different divisions. So, because I was working across board, so global payment services, investment banking, corporate banking, commercial banking, finance, global markets. And I think that is, the benefit of operation, especially within the EMEA regional management team. You get to see a lot of, things, you get to read a lot and get those knowledge, right? And I think one reason it is important is because when you move across board or check within the industry, there's certain programs, for example, okay, I don't want to mention programs here, but there are certain regulatory programs, right, that you see are very much relevant, in other I'll say across all of the industry. And then you realize that, operations actually and business enablement are giving you the core skills that are required to be relevant across the industry. Because it's always important to know that some people feel like, if you're in operations, it means that you're bound to operations forever, which is not true. There are certain skills that you can translate in other cases to other roles, other teams. Yeah. But then it's definitely not just admin. It involves a lot of critical thinking. It involves, project management, involves trade compliance, reading legal documents. So there's a whole lot when it comes to operations. Yeah.
Interesting, very, very interesting experiences there, Grace. And moving on, I have a question for Chidera. Operations is deeply cross-functional. You're constantly working with teams across the bank. Can you walk us through a recent collaboration that surprised you and what it taught you about how the bank actually operates?
Okay, great. So yes, within operations, it's a cross-functional role, if you work in operations. And one of the things that is being emphasized a lot at Bank of America is the collaboration culture. So everybody takes collaboration very seriously because there's nothing that you can do by yourself in your role. Every role has its own sub roles. Teams have sub teams. You definitely need each other to work. If there is something that has definitely, surprised me about how we've worked, or talk about a very recent collaboration that we've done, is realizing where I sit in the anti-money laundering team. We collaborate with our sales partners, with that's guys from transaction sales or payment solutions. We collaborate with document collectors. So we have the DCs, we have the information collectors, we have ourselves in AML onboarding, we have the OBMs, the OBS, we have people who go and collect information, who come and feed us back. So within all of these guys, also of course the risk partners, there's the operations readiness team. There are different teams within the AML operation that we interact with. And one collaboration, or a recent collaboration that I can point to, is one of the times when we had to onboard a client, and then I had a lot of feedback for the client. It's like, oh, we don't have this document, we don't have that requirement yet. Can you please provide this? And it was having to understand how to properly communicate with the DC, properly communicate with the OBMs, and for lack of, because I've gotten so used to using acronyms now. So onboarding managers are the guys who interface with our clients and then get the information that we need so that we can proceed with an onboarding, right? So they are the OBMs, they are the OBS, onboarding specialists as well. So interacting with these guys, making sure that the experience that we have for our clients is smooth, because at the end of the day, you don't want to ask for too much or be too much in such a way that the client then feels like they're not having a great experience, right? So the client experience is very, very important. So having to do all of that within our team, ensure that the OBMs and the OBS are doing their part, and then they understand why these requirements are necessary or why we need them, getting them to translate that to the client, bringing all of that back to us. It's very important for collaboration, because if we don't have them doing what they're supposed to do or translating the needs, then we will at some point be falling back on either regulatory requirements or policy, or even something that Bank of America itself prioritizes to determine our risk tolerance. So collaboration really is key. So far in my role, I've seen how it's important to go to communicate properly, to go back and forth sometimes, and ensure that we get what it is that we need for a smooth client onboarding and a smoother client experience. So yes, that's pretty much what I would think about collaboration and how we prioritize that here at Bank of America.
Very interesting insights. Very interesting insights. Moving on to the next question. This one will be going to Grace, and it's an interesting one. As an African professional in a global institution, were there moments where your background shaped how you approached your work or how you connected with colleagues? And how did you turn that into an advantage?
So this is a very big question, right? Two things I would highlight is integrity and respect. So those two values, I would like to call them, are very much important wherever it is you're working. You get to Bank of America, get to work with Bank of America in the US. It's very much important that you hold on to those dearly across, your entire career. Integrity, when you say, I will do something, I will do it, I'll get it done at that time, right? When there is a deadline, if you can meet the deadline, you have to explain, let them know you can meet the deadline. If you can't, you have to, let your manager or your, supervisors know you can't, right? So it's always important to keep to your word within, the organization. The second thing is respect. Now, I will share more about respect, but I think that it's always important, like this, idea, from Africa, you respect your seniors, your elders, is very much relevant here. However, the difference when it comes to respect is that the way it is expressed is quite different in the, in this culture, right? Today, what I would say in this case, the new culture. So I need not share more about like the African cultures and how respect is shown across various tribes. But yeah, it's just basically how you approach people, how you honor people, how you, speak to them. You need not kneel down in this case, like in this place, because it's a corporate environment, right? But it's how you approach them, how you speak to them. Just basically letting them know that you respect them, even if you're on a first name basis. You just need to express that. I would also say that, of course, like culture differs, right? So aside what integrity and respect that, my background from Africa has given to me, and then I've been able to translate to this environment. I think that culture is different. So there's a need to also embrace the new culture. And there is also a need to embrace the new working style. There's a lot of intensity that comes with working with such a global organization. You are working in London, like in this case, myself. And so you're at the forefront of everything that is happening in the globe. And so it's always, sometimes it gets intense, but it's important for you to, basically put in the work. There's a lot of hard work involved. And so the working style is definitely different. And just in terms of working style, I think one thing that differs and one thing I had to pick up was, speaking boldly, especially about what I've done and my achievements. It's important to carry the team along on the things that, that one does, and how it impacts the team, the value that you've added. I'll say those things are key for me. So just as a wrap, Africa gave me the values of respect and integrity. I was able to translate that. But then when I arrived the UK, I had to learn about their working culture and just general societal culture, as well as the importance of, emphasizing the value that you've brought to the team.
Amazing insights, and I hope someone wrote that down. That was very, very good advice there, Grace. Moving on to the next question, that will be going to Chidera. So the question is, as someone who recently came in, what is one skill you wish you had sharpened before starting? And what would you tell students to go and work on right now? Mm, very interesting question.
Yes, it is an interesting question. So, um, if there's something I'll just say out of to get it out of the way, it would be that you can't possibly learn everything. I think that's the reason why people are employed anyway. Someone has the strength, even though it might be your weakness, and then you guys are both on the same team to work together. So you can't possibly learn everything, right? But if there is a skill that I wish I had sharpened or I've had built a little more before joining my team, it would be my Excel skills. Now I do have, basic fundamental Excel skills. I can do functions, I can, do concatenate, I can do the V and H lookup and all of that, right? But I've come to see that there are things that my team could benefit from, somebody who could create dashboards on Excel, for example. Use Tableau, use Excel to create dashboards, support the teams with the team with, maybe like an oversight solution that could help us see, oh, how do we track different cases? Or how do we track these clients? How do we keep up with what we have and don't have, right? Or some other solution that could benefit the team. So I realized if I did have skills in Excel up until that extent where I could create dashboards or use Tableau, I definitely would have been happier. I would have probably been this star girl, but yeah, that definitely is a skill that I wish that I had. And not to say that we don't have people who do that on the team. So we do have the data guys. We have That's a separate team really that operates within AML onboarding. So we do have the guys who do data and all, but there's just something about having a skill that adds or gives you an advantage when you're in a place like this working environment. So that's something I wish I would have built on. And if I was to advise students, I think that was your second question, to advise students, and if you could just remind me.
Okay. Okay. The second part of the question was, what would you tell students to go and work on right now?
Yes, exactly. So, what I would tell students to go and work on right now, well, if you want to pick Excel, by all means, right? But the key things for me is your communication skill, absolutely important. And I know Grace has even touched on it, right? So just learning how to communicate, because it's a different environment from if you're coming from Africa or an African background. So you're communicating with people, your peers, you're communicating upward, you're communicating downward, you're always typing emails, you are responding to someone's email, you're getting on calls, you're clarifying things. There's client calls, there's sales partners calls, there's stakeholder meetings. So there's a lot of communication that happens within the bank. So learning how to communicate and communicate effectively is definitely a skill that you have to bring on or brush up on. So if it is taking courses, if it is reading more books, if it is even practicing with your friends, or even using your own camera phone, because I did that a lot when I was trying to improve my interview skills or my ability to really do an interview. I just set up my phone and my camera and I'd be talking to the camera and asking myself questions, right? So that's some of the ways that you can improve your communication skill. Another thing I would mention is being able to be bold. Oh God. And I know when Grace touched on it, I nodded because it's easy to get lost. You are coming into a place where there are star people. You're not, in Africa, you might be the star person in your school or in your program or in your school or your program or your community or whatnot. But when you arrive here, there are crazy amount of people who are doing beautiful things, who have done beautiful things and are still doing that, right? So being able to advocate for yourself comes from, like I said, your communication skills and then being bold. Tell them what you're doing, tell them what you've done, tell them how you're adding value because your manager is managing not just you, but other people as well. So advocate for yourself as much as possible. That is a skill that you have to build up on. So if you're somebody who, because I used to know a friend who is so modest and this girl does amazing things, but you never see her post about it, right? I mean, I did engage and I remember one of the things she said is, oh, I don't want to make other people feel less of themselves. I'm like, please share it. Whoever wants to feel less of themselves can feel less of themselves, but you've done so well for yourself, right? So advocate. If you are that kind of person, to don't be so modest to the point where nobody knows that you can achieve things. Nobody knows that you are valuable. Nobody knows that you're a superstar, all because you're trying to be modest or because you're trying to be humble. Nobody's saying brag, right? But again, like I said, advocate for yourself. Be bold, communicate well. So if these are the skills that you don't already have as a student, learn how to have those skills. Talk about your experiences, your achievements, your awards, your project, whatever it is that you have done. Talk about it with boldness, not from a place of bragging, but because you really know what you are about, right? That's how you tell anybody who's listening to you that you are solid. That's how you sell yourself. That's how you get them to know that you are the perfect fit for a role. And last thing I'll probably just add is critical thinking. Oh my God. There is somebody on my team that I've come to fall in love with because of how she thinks, right? And I tell her all the time. I mean, I've only been in my role for about 7 months, but this lady is fantastic with thinking. It's like you're talking about one thing and she has thought 5 steps ahead. How could this new policy impact us? How can this change impact the team? Okay, there's this, I mean, while this is welcome, there's this other part to it. So she's always criticizing and critiquing, maybe not criticizing, the word will be critiquing now. She's always critiquing things that are coming just to see where we can find loopholes and make improvements, right? And that's the kind of skill you want to bring when you're coming or when you're applying to summer internships, Bank of America or anywhere else, right? Whichever company, whichever industry, you want to show critical thinking. You're not just thinking about now, you're thinking 5 steps ahead. If there's a new change coming, how does it impact? Who does it impact? How does it make life better or even worse? Not every change is good. So keep thinking about all of these things. So yeah, definitely build your communication skills, learn to ask more questions, be bold, build your critical thinking skills, and then when you do sit down for an interview, of course, make sure that these things that you have built are shining.
Amazing insights. I hope our audience are really taking notes of the insights shared here today. Thank you for that, Chidera. And moving on, I have a question for Grace. OBE sits across so many functions from payments, HR, technology, and risk. You mentioned earlier on that you've worked across teams, and we want to oh, let me take that again. OBE sits across so many functions, payments, HR, technology, and risk. Have you moved across teams or taken on work outside your core remits? And how has that breadth shaped your career so far?
Okay. Thanks so much, Elizabeth, for that question. So I think for the EMEA regional management team, it's involved working with every division, HR, tech, legal, global markets, investment banking, everyone basically, compliance, right? So of course I had like multiple projects that I was working on that, had involved collaborating with all of these teams. So there was HR I've interviewed before. There is global markets. I've worked on trade compliance for, 100 plus jurisdictions. There is investment banking. I had to create like a booking mode strategy for investment banking, for global payment services, as well as global markets. So one thing that, working in COO in this case, right, has given me is the breadth of knowledge as well as the network within the bank, right? But then I also just wanted to highlight that, because of the skills I'd gotten within, the COO team, I was able to do something fantastic work, this in this secondment where, I manage like a portfolio of global CEOs and get to understand what they are doing at a higher level this time, not just like within the bank, but also like learn from secondees from other organizations and learning about how energy plays a role, it plays a fantastic role in driving sustainability, what the private sector CEOs are really trying to work on and promote, different things. So he has given like a breadth of knowledge. I've been able to had transfer the skills that I got from working in COO into this role, right? So a lot of the stakeholder management skills is very key. Governance meetings, how to run meetings. So I support right now with finance and audit committee meetings and board meetings. But yeah, so it's been like I feel like it's been the skills I've gotten within COO has been very helpful. And then one more skill I would like to highlight is risk management. And then I just think that, of course, when you just in terms of transferring skills, right? There's like when you say risk management, there's a lot involved in risk management, especially when you're in different teams, right? But then you realize over time that CEO prepares you to, be able to translate all of the skills you've gotten or your experience to other teams, right? And add value. And then I think I would like to highlight as well, would I say the grit that comes with working in COO, because you're working with so many people and so many teams, you've gotten so many knowledge, you're basically absorbed in all of these things, right? You you're able to offer more value, right? You can advise on certain core areas. Like right now, I know about modeling, I know about investment banking. I understand how the business really runs as a whole, like a banking institution. There's the middle office. So this gives like knowledge on how the bank is really structured and how to run a bank, what to look out for when it comes to risk, what specific regulatory programs are important across the industry, and just makes you well-rounded and knowledgeable.
Very impressive. And indeed, you sound really knowledgeable on all those areas you mentioned. Thank you for sharing that, Grace. Moving on to Chidera, your question is, operations is often described as the glue that holds the bank together. From where you sit as an analyst, can you give us a real example of a moment where you saw that play out? Some scenario where your work directly impacted something much bigger than your immediate team.
Okay, great question. Before I get into my response, can I just say how much I'm learning from Grace while standing here because she has
Definitely.
this wealth of experience from the different things that she's been involved in and she has done. So Yes, thank you for sharing from your wealth of knowledge, Grace. So for me, a particular experience where my work has impacted something bigger than just the organization is because I can share actual details. So I'll try and go around this one, right? So very recently we had to onboard a really, really big client, and they needed that account to be green for that jurisdiction in a particular set of time because it was important for future deals and all of that, right? Now, I remember how it was such a high pressure project because you had to get it done in very little time, right? And as an analyst, how it impacted even bigger than the bank was having to review documentation and then have them go back to clients, have our sales partners come in and speak and say, oh, this is why this is important, it's important for this thing to go green or for this account to work at this particular time, right? So having to just sit as an analyst and really critique and scrutinize this client to ensure that we have the right documentation, that we're following regulations, we're following policies, is something that had impacted that entire process, right? Because if I hadn't done the right things, we probably wouldn't have been able to smoothly onboard that client. We probably would have missed out on things that were very important or pertinent for the particular jurisdiction that they were onboarding to, and even for our own risk tolerance as a bank. So that's how important my work so far, our work in AML onboarding as an analyst is really, because you are that person who has to really check. Your attention to details has to be off the hook. Every single thing is questioned. Not everything just comes and then you are accepting. You are critiquing. If they say this is what they do, oh, does it tie with their funds? Does it tie with how they make money? Does it tie with what they've told us? So nothing ever just goes because they've said it. Nothing ever just goes because it's in a document. So even if it's in a document, it's signed, you are still asking questions. So as an analyst, there are a lot of different skills that you bring into your work, from paying attention to detail, to critiquing, to asking questions, to communicating, to making sure that you are really meeting every regulatory and policy requirement that has been made, to making sure that while you're doing all of these, the client is having a great experience, your stakeholders are having a great experience, because it gets to a point where whoever it is that is working with you on a particular case feels disturbed, or they feel like you've asked for too much, right? And so you are taking all of that into consideration while you are still doing a great job. So it's managing feelings. It's one of the things Grace has pointed out is making sure you know how to manage stakeholders, because sometimes the people you work with might not be the easiest going people, right? So your emotional intelligence has to show forth, right? You need to know how to communicate with them, get them to see why you are doing the things, or why you are asking for the things that you are asking for. So as an analyst, I've seen firsthand how my work impacts even bigger projects like future deals, because if this doesn't go green, or if this doesn't go as well as it's supposed to, it could impact client relationship, right? They could believe that, oh, they didn't have such a great experience and they don't want to do it anymore again with the bank, right? And then they're different. There's so many other different banks, and that's why relationship management is important, even as an analyst, even though I'm not a direct relationship manager, but you're thinking about how your actions will impact the relationship that the bank has with the client. So there are different aspects of how we work, or how I have worked personally as an analyst in the AML onboarding team, that I've seen ripple effects. So it's not just my team, it's the stakeholders, it's the sales partners, it's the guys who bring in the business, it's the IB guys who are going to do the deal that is coming, right? Is the client itself, it's their subsidiaries, it's a whole lot of people that do come in to make sure that this works. So my work as an analyst does involve a whole lot of skills: critical thinking, stakeholder management, paying attention to detail, questioning, communication, of course, being confident and bold, because sometimes you can get bullied. Why do we need this? Why are you asking for this? And learning to be bold and stand your ground and be confident, and explain to people logically, oh, this is why this is required. This is why that is required. Else you get to lose sight of what you're actually supposed to do. So being an analyst is you get the grunt of it. You really have to know how to do your stuff and do your job to make sure that every other person is on board and you deliver all together for the clients, because that's the end goal at the end of the day.
Amazing, amazing insights. And there's so many moving parts involved. I would encourage our audience to really sit down, rewatch this again, and try to pinpoint the things mentioned here so that they know exactly what you're going into as you consider this division. Thank you for sharing that, Chidera. And for my next question, I have one that will be going to both you and Grace. So the question goes, between the two of you, you represent different entry points and different stages of the OBE journey. For a student watching right now who is deciding between a front office role and an operations track, what would you say to them that they probably haven't heard before? Very interesting question. I will start with Grace on this one.
I'm so happy with this question. So the first thing I would say is realize that an investment bank does more than investment banking, right? So we have the global payments services, right? We have global markets. Within global market, there's the sales, the trading, there is the structuring, right? We have the operations team within the global markets. We have, of course, investment banking and the CEO teams that support that. There is, which else? There is the commercial banking, there is corporate banking. Corporate banking is what's it called? It's basically under credit, right? So credit is basically the teams that provide loans. Under credit, there is leverage finance. There is, like I said before, like corporate. Okay, sorry, I might be mixing things up now, but there's corporate credits. There is credit for financial institutions. But I just shared all this because I really would love for people to realize that an investment bank does more than investment banking, right? And then when you realize it, the next thing I would advise anybody to do is to research, right? Research what are the skills that these various teams require, right? Or these various divisions require. Secondly, based on what I've read on what they do, like a definition of what they do, am I drawn to it? The third thing I would say again is you have to do a self-assessment of the things that you like. What are you willing to give? For an investment bank, for the investment banking division, right? They really work long hours. Are you happy to do that? Like, are you happy to come in by 9 a.m. and close maybe like 1 a.m. the following day and resume back by 9 a.m.? If you're not that kind of person, then okay, how about the operations team? You can do your 9 to 5. Okay, what about the credit team? You can do from your 9 to 8 p.m. So, like, these are things to really consider. Do you like work-life balance? What skills do you have? Are you more tilted to tech? Can I actually do tech within the bank? Because there are tech teams, right, within the organizations. So I would just say this, like, because I really want so many people to realize that it's beyond, investment banking. There are so many other opportunities out, like within an investment bank as a whole that you can explore. If you're talking about products, for example, like, just more details on, GPS, which is, there is more on trade finance there. If you want to do trade finance, there is corporate cars and different products that they have under there. And it's more of like an advisory team, right? Something that people can, really learn and, pick up. And so I think people should really explore different options within an investment bank. And so if you think, however, that you're someone who loves to do so many things, you like speaking with people, you can't, like me, for example, can't sit in one place, always doing things, then maybe operations is something you should explore because it involves it's a mix, it's like a salad. So many things involved. So if you know you're that kind of person, then maybe operations is something you should actually explore. But if you know that you like, things that are very technical, right? Okay, then investment banking is there. Leverage finance credits is there. They deal with a lot of technicals and the modeling bits. You think, oh, I really want to do something related to infrastructure. There is global renewable energy credit teams, but I really would advise for people to, first of all, know that it's beyond investment banking. Secondly, do your research about the various teams, reach out to people. How do you do research? Go online. Investopedia is there to tell you what these teams can do. Secondly, reach out to people, just it involves a lot of research. Reach out to people, or can I just have 15 minutes, 30 minutes of your time to really understand this? And honestly, you have one of the best platforms in the world, SEO Africa. They would tell you all of these things that I'm saying, right? So explore this opportunity and then do your self-assessment. I always emphasize on self-assessment. It's very much important to know, basically understand your core, the things that you can learn. If you're mathematical, then okay, maybe you can actually do trading and structuring. But then if you're more of like, oh, I like the strategy angle, then there are various teams that actually offer strategy. So this is the advice I would give to anybody, that is, coming into the bank. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. That was good advice, Grace. Very, very relevant to our audience today. Thank you for sharing that. And I know they would take heed to your suggestions and do the self-reflection and all the other things you mentioned. Chidera, moving on to you. But the same question applies, and the question is for a student watching right now who is deciding between a front office role and an operations track, what would you say to them that they probably haven't heard before? Do you want to add anything up to what Grace has said?
Actually, I think Grace took a peek into my mind and said it all. Oh. That was what I was gonna say once I unmuted. I'm like, please, where is the globe or the urn that showed you what was in my heart? Anyway, so yeah, just to echo what Grace has said, she's talked about how it's bigger than an investment bank. I'll speak from an operations perspective. So within operations, it is wide. I talked about how there are different teams within operations. There's high risk detection, there's change management, there's process design, there's the tech team, there are business support team, there's a management team, there's controls. Even within AML itself, there is a credit operations part of it, there is the treasury part of it, there is the finance part of it, there's the data part of it, there is tech part of it. There's so many parts in the bank, literally, just as Grace has said. But for me, if I was to give an advice about, if you're thinking whether you should do front office or back office, I would say ditch whatever advice you've ever gotten, really. Because what I think is it's never really about front office or back office. Do you have the skills for it? And it's something that Grace has touched on, during your research and realizing, what you want to do. Do you have the skills for something? That's the first question you really should ask yourself. And when she said assessment, I couldn't agree more, because SWOT analysis isn't just for case studies or company valuation. You can do a SWOT analysis for your own personal development, for your strategic planning. Do you have the strength in this? Do you have, is there an opportunity in this particular field or path? Is there a threat there? If you have picked up tech, because I realize some of the tech guys that I've been talking to lately are like, oh, Claude and ChatGPT can do my work now. So you're thinking about all these threat factors to some of the things that you are picking, or the skills that you're the path you want to take, or the role you want to go for. If it's risk, oh, some things are able to do my job now. If it's finance, like we used to do, oh, you want to create a budget, ChatGPT can create a budget for you now. Do you get? So there are other moving areas that you have to consider when you are deciding what role you want to do, whether it's front office or back office. It really depends on what your skill set is. I was talking to somebody earlier and I shared with her that in 2023, when I was going to do the summer internship, right, I got invited to SEO Africa's Bank of America Career Day, actually. And I had applied for two of the info sessions, investment banking and operations. I tell you, I sat down for investment banking and everything Ibrahim said went over my head. it was like I don't have skills for for this. I still remember his name because it was like it was nice to see somebody talk with so much vigor and excitement about their role. So I was just paying attention to how, excited he was about the role. But did I have DCF skills? Did I have modeling and valuation skills? No, I didn't, right? And I had one shot at my application. And so after that session ended, I sat down for operations and I just listened to Kosi, and the other people who had come. I think at the time we had Yomi from the bank as well. And so they talked about operations, about how tech enables business. And I thought, oh, yeah, I do have skills for this particular role. I think this is where I want to put all my energy and then see if I can make a career out of this. And that was what I did. Decided investment banking wasn't the path for me at that time because I didn't have the skills required and I had to submit my application within a month. And then I went for something I already had skills for. I was interested in. It sounded interesting. It was my first time hearing about operations. So that's how I want you to approach your application. Don't think about the front office. Don't think about the back office or a middle office. Just think about what you have skills for and what you're genuinely interested in. Your desire matters more than anything. So is it something that you want to pursue? Is it something that is a foot in the door? Because I tell people too, I've met people who say, oh, what they want to do is this, but they know that, oh, it's competitive. I've seen people shy away because it's competitive. I'm like, okay, if you do want to get your foot in the door, do you want to consider something else that gets you closer to your goal? Even if you are in your team, just like, how Grace has talked about the different experiences that you've had, you can move around as well in the bank. At least I know to the best of my knowledge that you can. So if you want to get your foot in the door first, you find a way for you to get there. And then you're like, oh, you know what? Now that I've experienced this for a year, 2 years, I think I would want to try something else. And then you find a path that now creates what you then would call a solid career, right? So just really think about what your skill set is, do a SWOT analysis, and ensure that you know what your strengths are, your weaknesses, the opportunities that you have, the threats. Do a SWOT analysis for yourself. Find out what it is that you truly desire. Find out what it is that is a stepping stone to where you want to get to, or something you want to even pursue. Sometimes you get into a path where you feel like, oh, I'm not, this is just a way, a stepping stone to where I want to get to. And you fall in love. Right, Grace, would you agree that sometimes you get into a place and you feel like, oh, you know what, I really like it here? Exactly.
Yeah.
So it could be that for you as well. So that's what I would want you to think about as as you want to apply for global internship. Think about the skills that you have to even start or whatever it is that takes you to your goal at the end of the day.
Amazing insights. Thank you, Chidera, for sharing that. And we are about wrapping up with this session, with this panel discussion. I have one final question to both of you, and this is more like a follow-up on what you've already shared earlier on. The question is, what is one piece of advice, one single most important thing a student should do in the next 30 days if they are serious about building a career in operations at a global bank? I will start with Grace for this one.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. I just wanted to say that Chidera is really sharing so much knowledge here. Amazing. Thank you. So in the next 30 days, I would say the first thing is go and do your research about the various divisions. Like we mentioned already, understand the skills that are required, do your self-assessment. What skills do you have? And one thing that is very much important to mention is don't shut yourself out of the opportunities, especially when you know you don't have those skills. Within 30 days, you can actually gain some certain skills. So, what courses can you take to learn, to improve? Because one thing I've realized with career is your learning never ends, really. I think it's definitely more difficult than uni because uni, you're focused on, just studying, but career, you're actually working at the same time, studying to improve yourself, to ensure you remain relevant over the years. So don't shut yourself out. If you know you're really drawn to investment banking, then understand what the gaps are and then begin to develop yourself along that lines. If it's operations as well, I would say definitely just learn, improve on those skills, the communications, stakeholder management. How do you manage everyone, executives, people, your peers, everybody basically. It's very much important. How do you build presence? So upskilling is, definitely a very important one. And then the last thing I would mention is the importance of networking. So within these 30 days, try as much as possible to network with people. Let the teams know you even before you apply. This is a secret that I'll just let out. So let the teams know you before you apply. Let them know you're interested, because it really helps. Yeah, so that's what I would just share. Thank
Hmm.
you.
Amazing insights, Grace. Thank you for sharing that. I'll pass it along to Chidera. Chidera, you'll be closing us out today. What is one piece of advice or the single most important thing students should do in the next 30 days if they are serious about building a career in operations at Bank of America?
Okay, so I think that Grace has really touched on everything. So networking, building your skills, asking questions, doing your assessment. So not to flog on any of the things that she has already said. If there was something that I would add, it would be that you really need to start preparing on time. I cannot talk about this enough. I tell people that, look, it's never too early to start an application. If applications are opening in September, don't wait till August before you start networking with people. Just like Grace has said, talk to people, find out whatever it is that you can find out from them that will help your journey instead of waiting till last minute. So that's something that I know helped me during my time. And even sit for those exams, your higher view interviewers, you would have them for, I know at Bank of America, you do a higher view video interview. I know for other companies as well, it's something that is required. So just before you are ready for that, just make sure that you have, talked to the right people, that you have your CV already checked, you've had somebody review your cover letter, all of these things that help you put out a very solid application. Just make sure that you have done that within the next 30 days, given if we're imagining or assuming that 30 days is what you have. Make sure that you are doing these things. And just to add on to what Grace has said, that's really all that I would share.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing those insights, Chidera. And to our audience, I know you've heard a lot today. You've put down some points, hopefully, to apply to yourselves as you go through this journey. We would like to thank our panelists, Chidera and Grace, for joining us and also for taking up this time for joining us and reserving their time to speak with the next generation who are applying to Bank of America. I'll pass it along to my colleague Chika to continue with the next segment of the program, that is the Q&A. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And thank you to our panelists for the very wonderful information you have shared. I believe our audience have learned and they will definitely be applying the insights you shared in the application process. To our audience, can you appreciate the panel? I mean, just show some reaction as a way of appreciating them for the very insightful information they shared. All right. Thank you. All right. So we are at the Q&A stage. If you have a question, please raise your hand and I'll call you to ask your question. So I can see Olarinde. Olarinde, please unmute and ask your question.
All right. Good evening, sir, and good evening, ma. I want to first thank our speakers for that amazing session. So, my question is that since this is finance sector, and I as a pharmacy student or as a medical student in general, can I still apply for this internship? And if I'm going to apply, is it a must I follow, like, is it a must I have some requirement because I joined the meeting late? I don't know some requirement that might that I might need to apply. And the main question is, can I, as a pharmacy student, apply for this internship? And as a final year also, can I still apply? So that is my question, sir.
All right, thank you for the question. So the application is, I mean, the process is open to people who will be graduating in 2028. And so if you're in school and you are graduating in 2028, then you are eligible. On the other parts of you being a pharmacy student, yes, you can apply as long as you have an interest in any of the divisions that the program have for this year, right? So in this case, we are talking about operations and business enablement. And so if you have an interest in the operations area, why not? You can apply irrespective of your background. And also the same applies to the various divisions. As long as you have an interest in any of the areas, you can apply. Jesse.
Can I just add to that question, if that's
Yes, please go
okay?
ahead. Please go
Yes,
ahead,
I just
please.
wanted to say that I studied agricultural economics, and so I understand where you're coming from. My work, I studied for 5 years, so it was just basically sciences, agri, a theory and practical, and during the final year was financing and economics, but then I already did the internship before that time or during that time. But I just wanted to say this to you, right? It's also, if you say you want to move, you need to take certain steps to move. So what are you doing? So because I remember during that time, as I was planning to move and applying, I took the CFA Investment Foundations, and that is something you can begin to explore. What certifications will help to prove to the hiring managers that you are really interested in finance and that you have the core skills to go across board, then or to change your the career or the industry basically you're working in, then it's also just try as much as possible to join finance societies, because when you are closer to people, I think you learn more. So if you're in a finance society, they do a lot of trainings on how to read the interest rates and how it impacts, the portfolios, client portfolios, things on macroeconomics. You begin to understand those, the lingua, the jargons that are used in finance. So I just wanted to share that to you because those are the things that helped me.
Hey,
All right.
just to add to that before you continue,
Okay.
Chika, thank you so much for sharing that, Grace. To add to what Grace has said to help the person who just asked that question is try and find out what the roles and responsibility of whatever it is that your interest is. What is the role and the responsibility needed for, say, an operations analyst, a business analyst, investment banking, if that's the path you want to follow, even as a pharmacy student. Grace has already talked about doing some of the other things that shows your hiring manager or the people who would interview you that you have an interest in this field. But even if you don't know where to start from, a good place to start from is go online and find out what are the skills needed to excel as, say, an operations analyst or as an investment banker. Or even if I don't know how possible it is for you to see previous roles that have been open for Bank of America or any other company, because I know that in previous roles you would see responsibilities and what's it called, your role requirements there. So if you can read that, it does give you an insight into what they are looking for, what the division is about, what skills you can even start to try building way before the application process opens. So that's something to think about as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Grace and Chidera. Okay, so we'll go to Jesse.
Okay, hi everyone, good evening, and thank you to the panelists. So I joined and I was not very sure if I was at the right place because it appeared that it's just, should I say, people that just live in school that should apply for this opportunity. But I learned a lot, right? So I'm a compliance professional. So my question is for Grace. So in when she was speaking, she talked about, handling different, regions and all of that in course in, while executing her role. So I just want to, kind of get more insights for, should I say I'm currently handling like three jurisdictions. So how can I get better, right, at being on top of my game in terms of regulatory oversight in these various regions? And also, for an experienced person in compliance and all of that, how can I also get an opportunity with Bank of America? Thank you very much.
Hi, Jesse. Thanks for your question. So I think I will start with the last one. So just on compliance, there are compliance teams within the bank. What you can do is follow the careers page at Bank of America, and then you see as roles come up, especially on compliance, and you can apply. And like I said before, one way to, put yourself forward as as a very interested and passionate candidate is try as much as possible to connect with the people already on the team on LinkedIn. Just if you do your research, Bank of America compliance, you most likely will see, the people that are already on the team. So that way you have a chat with them, really understand what they do. And if there's any skills gap, can work on it before a role comes up. Or of course, you're always like on top of mind when you've connected with the teams. Now you asked a question, and so basically on how you can be on top of everything. There are various ways to do this, but the foundation of it all is you reading. So they always emphasize, especially for the interns, when they say commercial awareness, it just means that you read and you know what's going on in the markets, you know what is going on when it comes to regulations. And when I was doing my IRView interview, it was always like a major point, commercial awareness. It means that you are aware. So what's going on right now in geopolitics, how is it affecting the finance industry, and just in my case, like sustainability, what is happening right now in sustainability? Okay, in this case, I know. Good. But then at the same time, it's important for you to read. I'll say it's the foundation. And then secondly, it's just building systems around everything that would help you. For some people, they blocked out their calendars for 45 minutes, and this is what I do. 30 minutes, I read about the industry I'm involved in, or I'm responsible for within the SMI. Some people is on their way like to work, sat on the train, they are studying about what is happening, right? You can also use Google notifications. There's a way you can, basically set up your Google News in such a way that it just pops up basically on your phone when there's a regulatory change and all of that. Then it's important for you to also follow some I would say like some institutions are involved in regulation. So you can follow the FCA. They can, announce something that this is different right now. We've changed things. Google Alerts. You could change. They basically just follow the news, follow them, or maybe on LinkedIn. And you follow the PRA. All these are regulatory bodies within the UK. If you know that your work involves, like you said, multiple industries, it could be the US. Are you following the OCC? Just understanding what those changes are, and be on top of the game, because honestly, this is what is required for anyone within the role. And I feel like anyone that is working anywhere, you have to be on top of the game, know what is happening. You should be able to ally to your team. Oh, I just saw that something has changed, and this is how I feel it's going to impact us. Do you agree with this? Should we have the conversation on it? And how do we move forward with this? So I would say those things help building systems around the studying, the learning about these things, following the right institutions, so that you're on top of the game when it comes to the changes. It's just basically commercial awareness, and it comes from the foundation reading.
All right. Thank you very much for the very wonderful information you have shared. Okay, so Jesse, I believe your question is answered. So we'll go to Peter.
Yes, thank you very much, Grace.
All right.
Um,
Peter, please unmute and ask your question.
Okay. Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you to Chidewa and Grace. And Grace, it's nice seeing you and hearing your voice again. My question is a little bit more dicey in the sense that IT roles or tech roles that have overlapping functionality with operations, how best can someone align himself to this role? Because we hear more of, oh, tech guys are more machine facing. They are more they are not user facing, so they are more of machine coding and stuff like that. So how best can someone who is into tech more of overlapping roles with operations grow himself in that role, especially in soft skills? You mentioned communication, you mentioned what other skills that can someone like that improve on that can help him go in that overlapping roles?
Chidera, do you want to go first, or should I go first?
Oh yeah, I'm happy to go first, and of course you can share. So the question about tech roles and being an overlapping function with operations. I mean, for somebody who sits or who has just recently started their role in operations, I've seen firsthand how tech really impacts our role. And then there are different areas within tech. So it's not just, coding, it's not just interacting with machines, like you mentioned. There are other parts of tech, or at least the people that I've interacted with. There is the market operations tech, and these guys are in charge of ensuring that, the information that we get from the market, there's a reporting part of it. The guys who are doing market operations are the guys doing market operations technology, rather. They are making sure that whatever information that we're getting from the back end from the market guys are in line. Then there is the high risk detection team. There's the reporting tech team. So there are guys who their job, even as tech people, is pulling data for reporting, right? So there are different parts of tech operations that you can be invested in. In AML operation, we have the guys who do the data part of the data part of our job, and that's a tech function in its own as well. So that it just depends on what part of tech operations you'd like to do. There are overlapping functions, but what part of tech would you like to do? What skills do you currently have? What area would you want to consider going into? I think understanding this is a great base to start if you're looking to do a role in tech operations, or you're thinking about how there's a cross functionality. There is one. It just depends on what area of tech you're sitting in. There's high risk detection, there's reporting, there's market, there is banking tech. So there are different parts that you can. There are even guys who do the major coding. There are the tech guys who are in charge of our change transformation. So the guys who are making sure that when we are updating our systems, they are the ones who are responsible for it. So we have tech guys for that as well. Depending on the part or what function or what your skill level is, or what it is that you're interested in, it can help you make a decision on what part of tech/operations intersection that you would like to sit in. I'll allow Grace to just talk more about this and then the skills that you could consider developing.
Thanks, Joe. I think you really hit the nail on the head on this one. So first, I just want to say it's great to hear your voice again, Peter. Good to have you on the call. So I would just advise that you connect with people that are in certain teams, because when you're building skills, if you feel like there's a skills gap, right? I feel like it's important for you to chat with people, understand what exactly they are doing, what skills they are using, so that you build intentionally towards that skill and not vaguely. Because you can hear a skill and say, okay, Python is required. Great. It's great to use Python. It's a core skill, or there's Tableau or something. But I feel like it's important for you to, if you chat with someone, you understand how they are using Tableau, how they are using Python, and be able to, work towards that when it comes to your self-development, as well as be able to present that on your CV or during your interviews. Now, when it comes to tech teams, I would like to highlight some divisions I feel like you can definitely chat to that they involve a lot of tech. So first of all is the global payments services. There's the product team that are developing the product that is being traded, or sorry, that is being sold to clients, right? That's something you can, look to explore. There is global markets COO or operations team, like, Chidera has mentioned. It's important that you speak with those teams, because I feel like within those teams, you have to understand how the products are being used, the products in global markets. You have the currencies, you have the commodities, you have the like the fixed income bonds and the like. So it's important for you to know what those products are and how tech comes into it. What are the core skills that this operations team are using within global markets? What's the expectation if you're coming as an analyst, if you're coming as an associate, at what level do they require you to perform, which is still the expectations. Then I also want to highlight as well, there's a tech support team. So because it's financial institutions are very prone to a lot of, would I say web attacks and the likes. There are teams that actually ensure that everything is well protected. When you go into the bank, you're not just, when you open your laptop basically in the bank, you have to go into a special desktop. And that is done by a tech team. So I just feel like it's important to highlight all of the tech skills. So it's still part of the assessment and the research that you're doing. And then identify the people that are in those teams, and then have chats with them, understand what skills are required, how they use the skills to add value, especially in their day-to-day, realize which ones you already have, and then where the gaps are, which teams are of interest, and begin to build intentionally towards those skills, or develop those gaps basically. So that those are the advice I would give. But definitely this tech is a huge part of the bank, is a huge part of of the financial institution.
Amazing. Just to add, Grace, there's also the cyber security and business continuity tech team as well. There's tech enablement team. There are the guys who are in charge of our co-pilots that we currently use. And so there are different tech teams really that require different skills, just as Grace has mentioned. So it's something to think about.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe your question is answered, Jesse. Emmanuel, please unmute and ask your question.
Okay, good evening all. Yeah, I have three things to say, one of which is a question. So first of all, thank you to all the speakers. Then please to Chika, I'd love you to confirm if this is your email. I just sent it on the chat. So I'd love you to confirm if this is your email, because you asked me to send an email requesting for the recordings of previous sessions. I did yesterday. I'm here to get a response, particularly for that of technology and data analytics. So I've checked on YouTube. I can't find any. Particularly that session, I can't find anything on that. No record for that. So, and then the last thing for Chidera. Chidera, I sent you, I don't know, it's personal, but I just sent you a request on LinkedIn. So I'll be expecting to connect with you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So yes, that's our email. So if you have sent an email, we'll respond to you. Yeah, we'll give a response. Yes. I believe that's all right. Or did you ask another question?
No. That's just the
Very well.
question.
All right, that's fine. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll just check the comment section. Okay, so I can see people asking about opportunities for those who are very graduated. Okay, so for this internship, it's just for people who will be graduating in 2028. But as for other opportunities outside the internship, I believe like they spoke about, if you check their website, that's the Bank of America website, there will be, especially their careers page, I'm sure there are a number of opportunities there that you can explore. Yes. So let me see. Okay, who can apply? That's just what I answered. Those graduating in 2028, those who have second class upper and above, and also studying in an African university. When is a good time to start applying? So I'll just go to the application side right now so that you know when you have to apply and what you'll be going through in the course of the application process. Okay, so just in the next few minutes, I'll be talking about the application process. Okay. So I think my device is slow, a bit slow, but I'll just talk about it orally. So the application starts, or the process starts with you applying. So you have to submit your application immediately because we do not have a set deadline for now. It is on a rolling basis. What that means is that the earlier you apply, the higher the chances of you being able to get in or to be able to progress to the next stage of the process. So I encourage all of you to please apply early. The application link is already in the chats. I think David kept it on the chat. So please, you can paste it on your browser so that you can explore it and apply immediately. Yes, once you apply, then you get to the next stage, which is the aptitude test and the technical test stage. Um, this is basically an assessment to, I mean, just test you to know if you are a best fit. So the aptitude test consists of verbal reasoning, situational judgment, and numerical reasoning test. And there's also a technical test for the particular uh, pillar or division you applied for, right? So after the aptitude test and technical test, then you get to the application review stage where we now review your application itself. And afterwards, you get to the interview stage where you get to be interviewed by the team. When you progress out of all those stages, a second. Yes, so like I was saying, once you get out of the interview stage, we'll select you for the corporate immersion experience. The corporate immersion experience, like I explained before, is largely a training that we are going to be offered. And at the end of that process, you'll be, if you are shortlisted, you'll get to meet with the Bank of America team here in Accra, Ghana, sometime in August or September this year. Yeah, so basically that is the process. That's in terms of the application. All right. So I will encourage all of you, please apply early and immediately so that you can be considered for the next stages of the process. Yes. And if you also want more tips on CV, on interviews and so on, you can check our website for those insights. And also for past sessions we had, you can also check our YouTube channel as well for those recordings. All right. Okay. So thank you very much to our panel. This brings us to the end of the session. Chidera, I see your camera is up. Do you want to share any final words before we
Yes,
close?
thank you so much to
All right.
SEO Africa for bringing me on board, to Chika and to David, who I have been in contact with. So thank you, David, for being a good person to talk to. I just wanted to add rather, just before we close out, because I've seen people ask, how about opportunities for graduates as well? So if you do take the time to check the careers page, I know Grace mentioned it earlier that we do have a careers page that you can check. So if you are a graduate, we have new analysts opportunities that you can apply to, that are graduate specific programs that you can apply to, or ways that you can join a company you get even as an experienced person. So if you're on the call and not necessarily for summer internship, please feel free to explore the careers page and see if you find something that is right for you.
All right.
And good
Thank
luck,
you.
everyone, with your applications this year. Good luck. I hope
All
you do
right.
get in. So good luck.
All right. Thank you very much, Chidera. Grace, are there any final words you want to share before we close?
Just want to say thank you. Thank you to SEO Africa. I mean, when I got to know about this, like the speaking opportunity, I was just like, definitely yes. SEO has been very helpful during my career journey. I'm so grateful to Blessing and Joycelyn. And thanks to Ebenezer and David as well, who have been supporting throughout the process, and Elizabeth and Sheka that helped moderate this session. Just final words. I think it's just basically an encouragement to everybody. I know we said that like when you get to the bank, it's like a huge world. You get to meet different people from various areas of the world. But I just wanted to say that your voice matters, and you have your unique value that you had to every institution and to every meeting. And so I encourage people to apply. If you're still unsure, say this is way beyond me. I actually think you should put in the application, challenge yourself to be at such an institution like this. It's been for me a great learning experience, I would say, and it's been, it's challenged me to do way more than I thought I would be able to do. So just wanted to put it out there. Please send your applications.
All right, thank you very much, Chidera and Grace, for the advice and for all the information you have shared during the session. I mean, it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. And I believe that our audience have learned and they have taken your advice and everything you have shared, and they'll be applying same in their application process. So our audience, like I said, please apply and leverage all the knowledge and insight they have shared with you in your application process. And hopefully you'll become the next Grace or the next Chidera in a call like this next time. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy your evening. Yeah, thank you. We'll end it here.